Indeed, very important that you find a way of utilizing certified seeds, because that assures you actually better production. But at the same time, you can get certified seeds, but you don't have the right soil. You don't have the right fertilizer. Then it becomes a problem, because the final product would be as certified as the seed alone. So when it comes to agricultural production, we have to look at the holistic angle of it, or look at it holistically in regards to how can you empower all the different pieces of the puzzle to make sure that you are having proper produce. And that's why today we are focusing on this issue of fertilizer. Okay? How do we properly utilize fertilizer, and the issue of also soil management, which is very, very important. As I had earlier introduced my wonderful guests, very awesome people here, Dr. Guardian Guademba. Dr. You have such a beautiful name, Guardian.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's amazing. Good to see you. He's a food system specialist at WHH. Thank you very much. We also have at the center Victoria Nandwa, who is the regional agronomist, K Plus Fertilizers Kenya. Thank you very much, Victoria, for making time for the show.
Thanks for calling me in.
Asante sana. Good to see you. And lastly, at the far end, we have Dr. Daniel Mwenda Ntamailuta. You know? That's a beautiful name, but pronunciation is another word, yeah? I like it, Ntamailuta, but it's pronounced with an M and
Exactly.
Yeah, that's amazing, amazing. Good to see you. Is the CEO of Kenya National Farmers Federation, that is KENAF. Thank you very much for making time. So, starting with any farmer, you want to have a produce at the end of the day. Some people are new farmers. So there might be that assumption, if I get a field, till, put some seeds in, I'm good to go. Let's start from the basics and assume somebody is coming into farming. They have a piece of land. First of all, starting with you, Dr. What are the considerations before going fully into saying that I'm going to be a farmer? I have a piece of land. I'm ready to plant something. I've made up my mind. Maybe I want to do purpose. I want to do tea. Are there key decisions that each and every farmer has to consider before putting that seed, that certified seed, in that soil?
Yeah, thank you very much. We understand that a farmer may have everything figured out, but the starting point should be that soil is directly related to the productivity that is expected. And therefore, the first thing the farmer needs to know is to understand whether the soil is fertile enough to be able to support the seed to productivity, so that it can be able to attain the yield that is expecting to attain. So we'll say that a farmer should start by analyzing the soil so that he can understand what are the nutrient content of the available soil and what kind of amendments are required to be put into the soil, so that he'll be able to know what kind of quantities of fertilizer will be required and how is he going to apply this fertilizer. And secondly, this farmer needs to understand that on that farm, he needs to ensure that he has the right implements. Because basically you may plant the seed, but you need to weed this seed. You need to also ensure that this seed is actually taken care of from the time the seed goes into the soil to the time this seed germinates and to the time this seed is able to give him the produce. So the farmer needs to plan his farm, look at the resources that are required for production, and also be able to look at where he is likely to market the produce and how he's going to ensure that these produce that he harvests are properly taken care of, because we lose more than 40% of what we are growing on the farm just because of post-harvest losses. So understanding on how you'll be able to manage the whole cycle from production to harvesting to storage to marketing is very, very important.
Definitely.
And then being able to also understand how he'll be able to undertake the rotation on the farm, because probably he will do a one cycle growing several crops, but the next cycle you'll have to change the crop to ensure that he's able to prevent diseases that may crop in, pests that may crop in, and also to ensure that he's able to ensure that the next crop that he grows will also be able to produce optimally. So he needs to undertake a crop rotation, to have a crop rotation plan that will enable him to know that if, for example, I'm going to grow maize this season, probably what kind of crop am I going to follow up on, and what kind of crop am I going to intercrop with the maize or the crop that I'm growing. Understanding all this is very important, and the farmer also needs to understand that he will require to be able to get financial services. Financial services means that he may not have all the capital that is required to produce whatever he's growing. So understanding where he can be able to go to and probably get some financial assistance is very important. So the financial institutions come in handy so that they can be able to help him be able to understand exactly when he needs some support, where is he going to get it.
Okay.
Then he also needs to work with the meteorology department. Today the weather may look so good, but a month or two after growing the crop, the weather may drastically change.
Yes.
And when weather change and climate changes, it is going to bring in other anticipated problems that the farmer should anticipate and be able to work on them.
Okay.
And all this helps the farmer to be able to understand that if I have all the information and whatever I need figured out, then I'm likely to get the yield that I actually expect to get from that 1 acre or 2 acres of land, or that piece of land
Definitely.
where he's actually growing the crop.
So all-roundedness is critical, because sometimes we are so excited about going into a particular venture, and we even don't look at the market. I'm like, yo, let me just plant my onions first. I enjoy seeing them grow. Victoria, I mean, you work with farmers, and your specialization is in fertilizer.
Exactly.
Are there misconceptions attached to fertilizer, especially for new farmers? An element of unrealness or high expectations that are sort of the magic bullet in fertilizer, and reliance on that, without considering all these other elements when it comes to considering using fertilizer in your farm?
Exactly. That's a very, very big problem that you're facing with the farmers. The farmers usually assume that once they've grown their crops, once they use fertilizers in their farms, they are sure that they're going to get the yields that they're projecting to get. But at the end of the day, it's not just that. When it comes to fertilizer, we have the 4R principle that the farmer needs to follow. They need to know the source of the fertilizer they intend to use. It has to be from a reliable source. And the other thing is the timing. When is the right time to place this fertilizer? And the other 4R that they need to consider is the placement. How are they going to place this fertilizer in whatever crop they're using? If this farmer is doing a commercial production, maybe he's going to go into mechanization. But if it is a small-scale farmer, they will definitely do the hand application placement method. And then the other R that most of us are really, really burdened on is the application rate. That's where most of the farmers are missing out on. They know the fertilizer they should use, they know the time they should use it, they know when they should use it, but they use the wrong rate. And this now totally affects the final produce at the end of the day, because according to the Abuja 2006 statistics, the farmers were really applying very little fertilizer. And up to date, according to Calro's research for last year, there's not much difference, because the target was 50 kgs per hectare. And currently we are talking about 15 kgs per hectare. And this is a bit low for the production of our crops. And that's now where we come in as fertilizer companies to just ensure that they use the correct rate and to ensure they get the maximum yields they are looking at.
Definitely.
Yes.
That's quite interesting. Dr. Daniel, I know you represent farmers, and now even we have the conversation about sustainable agriculture with fertilizer. There is organic fertilizer now is coming into the mix. A lot is happening for farmers. And here's Victoria saying, you guys are not even utilizing the amount of fertilizer that you're supposed to use. Starting with that, maybe from a broader perspective, talk to me about the psyche of a Kenyan farmer, the farmer that you represent here. When it comes to going or coming into farming, are there gaps that you've realized with majority of your farmers, that even the more experienced one, they say, we look back as a young farmer or as a starting farmer, I think these are the common mistakes that a lot of farmers make when they come into farming, cutting across whichever products they're handling?
Thank you, Noah. Yeah, KENAF, of course, represents the interests of farmers in this country, all farmers. Now, when you come to fertilizer and what the ordinary farmer thinks about, I should add that our membership is 95% smallholder farmer. So you are everyday Kenyan farmer. There are a lot of issues about soil health these farmers do not understand. And I think that's where we should begin. My friend Dr. Gwademba was talking about several factors that farmers should consider when you're going into farming. And I think that's where it starts. A lot of our soils are different when you look at the different regions, different counties, which means that we cannot apply the same standard for all the soils in all the counties. Farmers are doing different value chains, which of course calls also for different fertilizers or different kinds of treatment that you give to the soil. Smallholder farmers also vary. A lot of Kenyan farmers really are older. You could imagine that there are a lot of things about agriculture. Maybe they do the way they used to do in the past, maybe the way they saw their grandparents do it, but things are changing. One of the things that are changing is climate change. As we can see with the current flooding, when you look at the waters that are being washed, flowing along our highways, you see they are brown, and that basically tells you that a lot of our soils are being carried away. But back to the fertilizer, I think what we should be looking at is, do we understand, does the farmer understand what kind of soil they are dealing with in relation to the value chain? Okay. And this is where CALRO comes in strongly, and other research institutions. This is where really we need to support farmers with technical advisory services. This is where we need to support farmers with things like soil testing, so that they understand my soil maybe doesn't need this kind of fertilizer, maybe it needs this.
Yes.
This is where farmers can determine, do I need a chemical fertilizer or do I need organic fertilizer?
Okay.
Do I need to improve, how do I need to improve the pH of my soil? How do I need to improve the organic matter in my soil? Because at the end of the day, as much as we talk about fertilizer, really, I think we should be also addressing soil health. And soil health is a lot more than fertilizer. So the technical know-how, this is something that we need to get to the farmers of this country, because that's where it begins really. Okay. Even with the government talking about bottom-up economic transformation, that starts with the farmer. If we can fix the farmer, we can fix a lot of problems in this country.
Wow, foundationally looking at soil health, because that's the best, literally speaking. Yeah. So we want to take a look. As you can see there on the table, we have some commodities. Yeah, these ones are well planted. They look very clean. Yeah. So we want to take a look at commodity prices, even as we take a short break. When we come back, now we start on those key elements, building principles, starting from the soil, how to handle our soil better as farmers, as we come up even to fertilizer and looking at the tail end of the value chain. Shall we? Sure. All right. Thank you very much.
Uwa mkono ambao unalima ardhi, mlango wa kulima, kuwa mshindi, kuwa na uhakika sasa, kulea mustakabali wa baadaye. Tufanye kazi pamoja na tukue pamoja, kuimarisha Kenya ni jukumu la Farm Kenya. Uwa mkono ambao unalima ardhi, mlango wa kulima, kuwa
My favorite food is ugali, kales and beef. If I could grow a magical plant, I would like the plant to be cars because I like driving. I want to be a farmer so that I can plant crops for my friends. How do cowpeas get their name?
The name cowpeas basically comes from just two words, the cow and the peas. There are several animals, including a human being, eat this crop, which is a type of bean.
Are you ready to make your mark in the world? To showcase your business, event, or special announcement in a way that grabs attention? Well, you can now rest easy with the Standard Group self-service platform, allowing you to book ad space in the Standard newspaper hassle-free. So say hello to your brand's visibility courtesy of Standard Ad Center, which is self-service friendly, easier, faster, and smarter. Book your ad in the Standard newspaper from the comfort of your home, office, or wherever you are. Because it really is as easy as visiting ads.standardmedia.co.ke/ads to follow the prompts and make it count for your business. A product of Standard Group PLC.
Hey! Ni wagwan. Karibu.
Kwa nataka kuona hii mikono yako kama ni sahihi unisaidia kutengeneza matunda.
Nini sasa unataka kunibrandi?
Ili ikuwe funzo kwa wengine ambao wanaendelea kuniuliza maneno ya 2001.
Sasa unataka kunibrandi kweli?
Nitakubrandi ndio ikuwe fundisho.
Unataka unisiage?
Na muache kuniita mama. Unajua jina langu ni Millicent, Mama Brian ama Mili. Kwa nini mnaniita hivyo mama? Kwa nini mnaniita?
Unataka unisiage?
Nitakusiaga ndio ikuwe fundisho uende uone vitole.
Nani atakunywa juice yangu sasa?
All right, welcome back to Farm Kenya, and today we are talking matters to do with fertilizer technology, soil health, just to make sure that as a farmer you're properly equipped. Remember, almost 95% of the food that we eat in our country comes from a smallholder farmer like me and you're doing a small kitchen garden to maybe you have a couple of acres of particular crops. So these skills are important and they're lacking. If at all we are able to infuse that, it will make a whole difference. That's why we want to take a look at today's episode of Farm Guide, and it touches on matters fertilizer and soil health. Take a look.
The most well-known and imperative benefit of healthy soil is food production. Healthy soil is full of organisms that turn dead matter and minerals into vital plant nutrients. A shocking use of healthy soil is to use it to protect against drought. Healthy soils can absorb and store water, which acts as a mock reservoir during stints. The way to maximize our farming land is by use of technology such as soil testing, which offers guidelines that includes understanding the variability of crops that thrive in different regions in our country.
Yeah, generally you can see how diverse soils are and how...
Elvis Raymond is a lab manager specialist in soil plant spectrodiagnostics lab at ICRAF, Nairobi, Kenya. He shares with us the importance of soil testing.
The key objective of the lab is just generally to help change the way we generate soil information to better inform decision making at policy level and at different organizations or development organizations. So the decision is taken up and as well down to small scale holder farmers. So the unique thing about our lab is that it's a light-based lab. So we don't use chemicals, it's chemical proof. It provides a cheaper way of analyzing soil samples at a landscape level, something that was not feasible earlier on. Initially, we started off with infrared. We're still maintaining that, and we moved on to X-rays. We're still using X-ray. We previously were using laser diffraction and X-ray diffraction to evaluate different soil functional properties. So the analysis is not only limited to soil, so you can do wide array of analysis so with light. So you can work on plants, you can work on fertilizers, you can work on manures at that cheap level. What happens is that you shine light on the sample, and from that light you get a spectrum. From the spectrum, then you're able to pull out different chemical, biological, physical properties of whatever you're analyzing.
In order to grow crops, we want soil to hold water and nutrients like a sponge, where they're readily available for plant roots to take them up, suppress pests and diseases that may attack our plants, seize carbon from the atmosphere, and clean the water that flows into the rivers, lakes, and aquifers. Organic matter is quite possibly the most important aspect of a healthy soil. This includes plant and animal materials, soil microorganisms, and products of these organisms, and the decomposition process. A sad fact is that most farmers in the country have little knowledge whatsoever about soil health. ICRAF, through their soil testing lab, goes a notch higher in capacity building efforts to farmers by doing thorough research and share the findings with the government and the advisory agencies to ensure that the target community, who are the farmers, gets to benefit.
What we've been doing over time is to try to scale down the technology to the end users. And I think as a Kenyan that probably this will also give youth opportunity, and in terms of employment, if the technology is actually rolled out fully and into our society. What we're trying to do with the innovation is we're trying to work on developing with different manufacturers miniaturized spectrometers And at the moment, we are testing prototypes from different manufacturers. And a good example would be for us to see how best we can equally use mobile phones as a spectrometer. And we believe that with our own systems and library that we have, we'll be able now to sort of generate fertilizer recommendations and such stuff that would assist a farmer improve his production, food production or yields at any given time.
Soil testing technology has contributed greatly for effective manufacturing of soil treatments such as fertilizers, which are site-specific, and they have contributed greatly in the agricultural production process across the country.
It's only 20% of our land that is actually arable. 80% is not suitable for farming. Yeah, and the part that is suitable, probably most suitable for farming, a lot needs to be done in terms of land health and soil management. So the approach that we need to really use is to make sure that we get to know the status of our land, which of course informs the soil fertility levels, and that has actually sort of influenced food production. And over years, of course, farmers have been using fertilizer, applying fertilizers, but it seems like we are stagnant, and there is need for us to develop robust soil testing methods, because traditionally we've relied on wet chemistry labs, which are not capable of giving results that would inform fertilizer recommendations that much more faster as compared to the light-based analytics.
Soil testing, according to Raymond, assists in offering customized information for environmental sustainability. Farmers are now well advised with personalized agricultural guidelines, which have credited to high productivity.
The global world is actually moving towards precision farming. And then in Africa, we also have lots of challenges because our soils are also not uniform. We have variation between and within farms. So blanket fertilizer recommendation will not take us anywhere as Kenyans. So we need to work towards developing robust soil testing approaches that would eventually help our farmers and be able to increase our food production going forward. So soil testing is just a way of measuring nutrient levels available and total nutrient levels within the soil and as well on the plants and as well on the fertilizers. So we need to know what we should apply, how much should be applied, when, and at what rate.
There are several major threats to healthy soils. All are preventable. Compaction. This happens when the soil has no airspace in which to absorb water and air for plants. It is caused by poor farming practices. Either the soil is not kept healthy with proper care, like adding enough organic matter, or the soil is trampled with equipment. If compaction gets bad enough, roots won't be even able to penetrate the soil. The roots can't seek other nutrient-rich soil, and air and water cannot penetrate the soil as well as to nourish the plants. Some soils had sufficient levels of nutrients in the past, but the removal with the crop harvest has depleted the reserves. Agrochemicals are used in farming to increase crop yields. However, over time, it has backfired by disrupting the microorganisms in the soil. The result has been more harmful bacteria instead of beneficial bacteria. Erosion occurs as more forests are cleared for building or farmland. Topsoil is blown into the waterways. Plants that replace trees cannot hold soil as well as erosion continues. Soil for growing food is getting dumped into rivers because trees are not in the way to stop it from happening.
So the systems that we have generate a lot of data. Once you shine your sample with light, you can pull out relevant information with regards to chemical, physical, and to some extent biological property of the sample. It could be soil, it could be plants, it could be fertilizers, and all this, we encourage people to do all this at the same time.
A common mistake is overfeeding the soil with excess fertilizer, which is bad for plants and the environment. Too much fertilizer may burn up plant roots and make the plant more vulnerable to insects and diseases.
So we've developed very robust analytical techniques over time, and this has evolved, and we actually using infrared to evaluate both available extractable nutrients and physical properties in the soil, and as well chemical properties, nutrients or chemical properties in plants. And as well, we use the same technique on fertilizer screening to check on fertilizer quality.
ICRAF has worked in partnership with other organizations, and as Raymond shares, such is the 1 Acre Fund. Such organizations have enabled ICRAF to achieve their goals, which among them is to bring this technology nearer to farmers. Accessing such facilities has remained a challenge to most farmers, limiting them to carrying out soil tests, which is a crucial aspect in achieving high yield productions from their farms.
We've worked closely with a number of organizations in this, like the Nature Conservancy in Muranga, and our team was out there to collect soil samples, and we analyzed those soil samples. We eventually came up with recommendation rates and the soil status reports, which were then disseminated to farmers, and they were able to adopt them. And at the moment, they're actually implementing the recommendations that we made for them, and they'll soon be now working towards that in the next cropping season. Most farmers are showing positive trends towards adopting the soil testing, soil testing approach. And I would give an example. We worked closely with counties, and we've seen counties that have come up and are much more willing to adopt and are much more willing to sort of adopt the technology and to help them set up their own rural spectral labs or rural resource clinics for their farmers. We are actually aware that Bungoma partnered with one of the private companies that we've worked closely with to sort of roll out their own mobile soil testing labs.
Right, that is Farm Guide right here, the Farm Kenya show. And carrying on our discussion, just seeing that particular production, soil testing seems to be a very important piece of the puzzle when it comes to farming. Dr. Harry, talk to me about, especially since Dr. Daniel already mentioned, majority of our farmers are small-scale farmers. Are there effective ways of doing soil testing? And also, are there other elements of proper soil management systems that can be implemented by a majority of farmers, and how?
Yeah, thank you very much. One of the things that farmers need to understand is that when they are going into farming, they want to make a profit. And therefore, the cost of production has to be considered. And one of the costs that they need to consider is the cost of analyzing their soils. But one important fact that we need to know that it's not always that when your farm is not producing that doesn't have the nutrients. Sometimes the nutrients could be locked. For example, when the pH goes too low and the acidity levels go probably beyond 4 and below, then you realize that the nutrients will be locked in the soil and the roots may not be able to absorb these soils. So one purpose of analyzing the soils to understand exactly what is missing in the soil and what quantities are you supposed to apply into this soil. But as farmers make a decision now to go into external inputs, those are the fertilizers, the inorganic fertilizers, they need to understand that there is the law of diminishing returns. That it does not mean that for every kilo of fertilizer that you put into the soil, you are going to get an equivalent increment in production. So at some point, a farmer may continue putting in inorganic fertilizers, and to an extent that he realizes that production has still not been able to be what he has. So farmers are advised to, first of all, understand how to minimize external inputs and be able to use whatever is available within the land. And we normally say that farmers should be able to learn a number of technologies. One of the technologies should be, farmers should be able to integrate the integrated soil fertility management principles. This basically looks at the composting, which this is a compost that can be prepared within the farm. Farmers can be able to collect the farm debris, compost them, and when they are well rotten, they can be able to give us the same nutrient content of the inorganic fertilizer that's there. So organic fertilizers can be easily formed on the farm, and farmers can be able to use them without having to go to the field. Farmers should also understand that if the land remains bare, or if they burn the land, then what happens is that they are killing the organic matter within the soil. They are also killing the living organisms in the soil, because soil is actually a living organism. And when soil stops being living, then that's when productivity becomes an issue. So farmers should make the soil to be as living as possible by ensuring that they go into conservation agriculture that will allow the land to remain covered throughout, that will ensure that they minimize the disturbance to the soil, and they also understand crop rotation. This will help them to ensure that they can unlock the already available nutrients. You're also saying that farmers should look into incorporating trees within the farming system. This is basically agroforestry, which will actually support them to ensure that they can be able to incorporate agroforestry trees that are nitrogen fixing. Then we need to also understand that we have a lot of soil, tons and tons of soil, but only about 10 centimeters of the soil has the nutrients. And therefore, they need to prevent soil erosion. Most of this soil, when it is carried away from the land to areas whereby farming doesn't take place, then productivity reduces. And we need to know that for every 10 centimeter of soil that is carried away from the farmland, it gives an equal 30% loss in productivity. So farmers should be able to look at soil and water conservation measures that will enable the soil to remain within the land, so that the topsoil of about 15 centimeters deep should actually not be carried away.
That's very, very critical. And I mean, even that consideration that you've mentioned, and coming to you, Victoria, for farmers to be able to effectively utilize now these external aspects, how critical is it to manage that aspect of soil conservation, soil management? Are there particular issues that farmers should be able to understand even as they utilize fertilizers? That is very critical.
Yes, and just as my colleague has mentioned here, it's very important to integrate the inorganic fertilizers with the organic fertilizers, because they work hand in hand together. When the farmer is considering the use of inorganic fertilizers, he should have ensured that his soil has sufficient organic matter in it. And our main challenge currently in the country is on the soil pH, just as he has mentioned. Our soil pH, most parts of the western and the North Rift region has a very low soil pH. And this is managed by liming. I'll introduce the fact of liming our soils. In as much as we are using the organic fertilizers, we also need to lime our soils to ensure that our pH levels are on the right levels. Because if your pH level is not at the right level, even when you come in with your inorganic fertilizer during planting and top dressing, the crop will not benefit. The fertilizer will not be efficient for that crop. And definitely your yields will be affected at the end of the day. Because the crop will not take up the fertilizers.
And majority of farmers know how to do this pH testing of their soils. Is it something that is pretty popular?
It's something that we are educating them about. Several organizations are on the ground doing the analysis for the farmers, definitely at a fee. And therefore, most of the small-scale farmers, just as my colleague has mentioned, they need to put into consideration that cost before they start their planting during the season. Yes.
Definitely. Dr. Daniel, it seems this is not a mainstay or a common practice in the Kenyan farming value chain, if I may put it so. What is hindering that to make some of these practices very common? Let's start with matters soil management, yeah? Testing of the pH. It should be common knowledge for anyone going into farming that this is supposed to happen before I plant. Look at this. Protecting, integrating some of these elements. What is hindering us from achieving that from a farmer's perspective?
Well, thank you, Noah. I think one of the biggest hindrances is the technical know-how of the farming population in this country. Like I began with saying is that most of our farmers really are older. So some of these issues maybe are not really well known to them. Mm-hmm. Then there's also the death of the public extension system, where you realize that extension workers, if you will, crop and animal doctors that we used to have when the country's agricultural sector was thriving are no longer there. So you have a mix of farmers who really are not well aware of the issues that they need to look into, and then there are no people really to show them the way. Mm-hmm. And that is why we at KENAF are always agitating for this idea that for us to transform this country's agriculture, we must get to advising farmers on the right things to do. When you talk about soil pH, I'm sure there are several organizations, commercial, that are offering this service. We have urged the government, both at the national and the county level, that this is a farm input. Just like fertilizer, farmers need to be supported on soil testing. There are very simple technologies now where farmers can, we don't have to pay a lot of money for this to be done. So this is something that really should be supported by the public purse. Okay. Because it has a very big return. If we can really transform these countries' agriculture, like I said again, then we grow this these countries' economy from the bottom up. So the issues, it is that farmers do not understand. When you talk to my mother or grandmother, they will not understand what pH is. Yeah. But if there are people there with them, paid for by the Ministry of Agriculture, paid for by the county government because agriculture is devolved, and other partners, I'm sure there are other people in support. We are trying to do our small ways at KENAF. I'm sure farmers would understand this, so that before you do your fertilizer, before you really determine what your soil needs, you know exactly what the soil needs, and that way, whatever you want is going to enhance production and productivity. All right, definitely. Wow. Now we want to take a short break right here on the Farm Kenya show, and even as we do so, we have some farmers, who are trying to do it by the book, doing it right. So as we go for the break, of course, let us go through that route of Farmer of the Day.
Area hii ilikuwa imesungukwa na msitu. Ilikuwa imesungukwa na msitu kabisa. Na area hii kulikuwa kukinyesha, hata kunaweza nyesha kutoka asubuhi mpaka jioni. Na tena mito, ilikuwa mito nyingi sana area hii. Ilikuwa mito sana sana. Kila sehemu ambayo ni bode, lazima upate maji yanatiririka. Sababu misitu ilikuwa ni nyingi, na kama tunavyofundishwa sana sana na wataalamu wa anga na wa misitu, tunaambiwa mahali misitu iko kwa wingi, mvua haikozi. Lakini wakati kama huu, hata haijulikani kama zamani. Wakati ya zamani tulikuwa tukijua mwezi wa 4 ndio mvua itanyesha na ndio tutapanda. Mwezi wa 7 tena kutanyesha mvua ingine. Hata mwezi wa ikiwa ikienda namna hiyo. Lakini wakati huu haijulikanagi ni wakati gani itanyesha. Tunastukiaga tu mvua imenyesha, sababu hali ya anga imebadilika, sababu ya misitu imekatwa kwa wingi, imekuwa kama jangwa. Hata wengi watu imekuwa ni shida, hata kuni imekuwa ni bara, sababu ni shida, sababu hata mahali ya kwenda kupata hizo kuni, pengine upande miti kwako kwa shamba. Na hata mimi mwenyewe ninahimiza watu ni vizuri kupanda miti kwa mashamba, sababu serikali haitaki mambo mtu kuingia kwa msitu.
My name is Jean Ojiro. I am a model and digital content creator. I've always loved being photographed. Like ever since I was a child, ever since I was a teenager. You wanna take a photo of me? I'm going to pose for you. People will see that 30-second clip, but you don't know the 24 hours that it's taken to shoot it. For the people who want to be models, because si kazi yako ni kupose tu, kazi yangu si kupose tu. I went for the audition. I did the hair and makeup. I came for a second audition. It was rough. We were rained on.
When you subscribe to the Nairobian Extra or TNX Online, everything is TNX rated. Compelling gossip becomes irresistible online. Enchanting travel becomes exotic online. Trend-setting fashion becomes mesmerizing online. Fascinating celebrities become sensational online. Intriguing scandal becomes outrageous online. The Nairobian Extra or TNX Online is much better than X-rated. It's TNX rated. Subscribe to TNX Online, www.tnx.africa, and enjoy TNX rated everything live. TNX, nothing stays hidden.
My favorite food is ugali, kales and beef. If I could grow a magical plant, I would like the plant to be cars because I like driving. I want to be a farmer so that I can plant crops for my friends.
How do cowpeas get their name?
The name cowpeas basically comes from just two words, the cow and the peas. There are several animals, including a human being, eat this crop, which is a type of bean.
All right, welcome back to the Farm Kenya show. We are talking matters fertilizer, soils, essentially what it means to be a farmer. And we've seen what the country is going through. A lot of rains. Now, amidst such an environment, if you are a farmer, how are you supposed to tackle this dynamic? I know there is climate change, so there is that level of unpredictability sometimes, and it becomes very difficult. And of course, engaging in this discussion. We have a heavy panel here, even as we come to the end of the show. Dr. Godemba from WHH, Victoria Nandua from K Plus Fertilizer, and Dr. Daniel Mwenda, who is the CEO of KENAF. I mean, Dr. Now the rains are here. Yeah? It becomes, I mean, how should farmers, especially you mentioned that aspect of, we have tons of soil, but I think it's 15% or so that has the nutrients that plants do require. And now the rains are here, they're washing this 15% away. I know you had touched a little bit on that, but talk to me about a normal Kenyan farm. Sorry for that, because this passion, I'm almost dropping the phone. But a normal Kenyan farm, being able to, what are some of the things that we can do in our farms in this weather and climate situation that we're going through right now that can make our farming more sustainable and maintaining those nutrients?
Yeah, thank you very much. First of all, I have to start by saying that the rains are good, but they can also create havoc. And what we need to do now is for both the government and the private sector, first of all, to come up with a contingency plan and also come up with recovery plans, because obviously we are going to lose the fertile soil. Just as I said, when we lose about 10 centimeters of the soil that is removed from the farm to areas whereby we are not probably farming, then we are losing 30% of our production. That's outright. Once the soil is washed away, productivity lowers by up to 30%. So we really need to prepare ourselves and understand that this is something that will actually affect our productivity probably for the season. And we need to understand that already the soils, the nutrients within the soils have leached, others have already been washed away. So programs should come up whereby farmers, especially smallholder farmers, can be supported to ensure they can replenish the soil. So the nutrients that have actually been washed away or what has leached, we return these nutrients to the soil through both organic fertilizers and inorganic fertilizers. And farmers should be trained on how to create their own inorganic fertilizers. Secondly, we need to really relook at what we need to do to ensure that we prevent soil erosion, because soil erosion is what both soil, water erosion and also wind erosion should be prevented. And farmers should be trained on soil and water conservation measures. This basically to ensure that even if it rains heavily, that the soil does not leave the farm. And this is through soil and water conservation measures whereby farmers will go into terracing, will be able to put up gabions, will be able to put up retention ditches, and will even be able to put up runaways whereby that excess water can be allowed to pass through probably the farm, but without actually being able to wash away the soil that is there. And we are saying that agroforestry is very important. This is a blessing. We know very well that with the heavy rains, we can be able to plant trees. So this is where we really need to come up with campaigns to be able to plant the trees and to be able to conserve both the off-farm and the on-farm. When we conserve the off-farm, then we are preventing this soil leaving on-farm to off-farm. When we protect the off-farm, then we are preventing this soil from leaving the fertile areas. And what we really need to understand is that we really need to support farmers to understand the effects of the heavy rains on productivity. And therefore we put measures in place, starting from them being able to select the right kind of seeds varieties that can be able to grow under conditions whereby the rains are probably heavier than normal, being able to understand what kind of fertilizer, both the micro and the macronutrients, they are able to replenish and put in the soil, and work with the laboratories to ensure that farmers can get soil analysis results and they can be implemented. And finally, we need to ensure that the extension team, both public and private, have to work hand in hand with the farmers and be able to categorize the effects of the heavy rains on the farming systems. And through this, farmers will be able to come up with a contingency plan to protect them from losing the soils and reducing on productivity.
Definitely. Victoria, for fertilizer, how are we handling that? I know Dr. has mentioned a little bit of that, balancing organic, inorganic. Is there a particular approach as a farmer right now? Maybe your crops are at that level you're supposed to apply. The rains are here, like surprise. How it's supposed to tackle that from a fertilizer perspective?
Well, it's a bit tricky right now, I understand, for the farmers. But what we've been advising the farmers during the heavy downpour that has been taking place, anytime they get an opportunity, they apply foliar sprays. This is the application of nutrients through the leaves, which has been a positive impact, most especially for the farmers who are not in a position to do their top dressing on time. But definitely the main thing, as Dr. has put it, is the rehabilitation now after the rains have subsided. They need now to go back and incorporate the organic and inorganic fertilizers, and in the right proportions. They should not assume just because there was a lot of leaching and a lot of losses of fertilizer that they should over-apply fertilizers. They should just use the correct recommended rates for effective growth of the crops that will have been left in the farms.
All right.
Yes.
Definitely. So balance is critical. Do not overdo it.
Exactly.
Very, very important. Dr. Daniel now, first of all, as Kenneth, are you talking to the farmers, across the country? What's the situation with the rains?
Well, clearly we are talking. We are doing a lot of talking with farmers and actually doing a lot. I should say so far through what we are calling the KENAF Farm Forestry, Afforestation and Biodiversity Conservation Program, which we started in the year 2021. And our plan really was to mobilize farmers in this country to plant 10 billion trees between 2021 and 2030. For this rain season, which we call MAM, the MAM cycle, we have now done close to 900,000 trees planted across 17 counties. We are continuing with this. The rains actually have cut off some of our plants, like what we had for next week in Uasin Gishu and Trans Nzoia. When we are planting these trees, we don't only plant trees, we encourage farmers to learn a lot more about growing trees, because that's when you realize the benefits. We hold workshops on things like biodiversity conservation, things like soil health, things like fodder banking at the farm level. So how you store fodder for when we have droughts, and because obviously we are reminding farmers as we plant these trees that we are now going through this, but in 2-3 years we are going to have a serious drought in this country, and we need to prepare for that. So these are some of the things that we are teaching farmers. Like again, I said, close to 900,000 trees planted over the past 4 weeks. We'll continue to do that even with the rains. But then, more importantly, is the lessons, is the workshops, farmer level workshops that we are holding to go with this tree planting, for farmers to realize that the trees have to be grown, not just to plant. How do you conserve biodiversity at the farm level? How do you store fodder at the farm level? How do you mix the trees that you plant? Because we have a formula at KENAF. We do 50% indigenous in the area, so that they grow, whether there is drought or rain. We do 30% fodder and fruit, so that nutrition also is taken care of, fodder for farmers who have livestock, and then 20% fast maturing. We train on things like integrated soil management, water conservation, roof catchment, how you harvest water at the farm level, how you do trenches, like Dr. Gwademba was saying. A lot of young people these days, I'm sure you didn't know fanya juu and fanya chini, the things that used to be done in the past. We are very happy the government is now focusing on reviving the 4K clubs, so that a lot of kids can learn about agriculture from when they are very young. We are very much against at KENAF looking at agriculture as a profession for the old, for the retirees, for failures, for people who have nothing else to do in life. They go into agriculture. This is wrong. Agriculture really is a profession, just like medicine, just like journalism. In fact, we believe that the people who should be considered first in this country is first farmers, because they feed us all. Second is teachers. Third is doctors. Then fourth, maybe journalists could come for the state. Exactly. But farmers, teachers, doctors, then journalists. Everyone else comes after that.
I know. I see that, man. That's proper. Capacity building remains very critical. I'm glad you are going through the counties, which is very, very important. As we finish, we have less than, actually have very few minutes to close this up. We want to do our parting shots, but in a very interesting way, because sometimes I feel even when we are having discussions, you've been told the topic is fertilizer technology and sustainable soil management, and you're like, this is the most important thing. Then you come and start talking to Noah, and he's taking you on, there are floods, and you're like, okay, why are we talking about that? So as we finish up, Dr. Haring, is there anything else that maybe you feel is important to address that we might have missed in this conversation that we've had over the past 1 hour? What will that be briefly?
Yeah, thank you very much. Information is very critical to the farmer. Right now we are experiencing heavy rains and some of the farmers are not even aware what they are supposed to do. So we really need to ensure that information regarding weather reaches the farmer, and also information regarding extension services. How are they going to behave in such circumstances? And information on whether what they are supposed to do in case the rains continues to be on and on, because it will automatically affect productivity. And of important is for us to always be able to plan for such actually calamities, so that we don't actually take action when the rains are here, but we take action and prepare even before the rains are here. So critical information reaching everyone, reaching the farmer, and farmers being advised to prepare themselves for the heavy rains is very important, because in the process they'll be able to prepare themselves, and once they are prepared, then the effects that are likely to occur as a result of the heavy rains then will not be as adverse as if they were not prepared.
Definitely. Preparation is key. There's a quote around preparation that I've forgotten. Can anyone remember? Preparation is better than what? Prevention. Prevention is better than preparation. Yes. Are there prevention measures that can be done other than preparation?
Yes, actually there are quite a number of prevention measures that are supposed to be done. First of all, we need to ensure we prepare our land. We look at the terrain of the land, the topography. We understand this topography, and farmers are trained in advance to be able to prevent the soil erosion that will occur when it rains heavily. Secondly, we prepare farmers to be able to acquire the inputs that will actually go into the farming activities. And once these farmers are prepared, they will have everything. They'll even understand that now that we have the long rains, because even when we are planting seeds, we know that the seeds come depending on how long the rains will be there. So we are even going to advise them to probably change the variety of seeds that they are going to plant over this season, because they will obviously have intense rain than probably the previous seasons. And this will help them to be prepared and probably to safeguard themselves from losing their crops.
Definitely. My director has just corrected me. She tells me prevention is better than cure. I was like, preparation and prevention. I'm just forming my own quotes here. Yeah? Amazing, man. You know, that's the ingenious. I'm kidding. But Victoria, in regards to matters fertilizer, I know that is your area of specialization. There's a lot of talk around there. Now we're moving into sustainable agriculture and whatnot. Maybe you might paint for us a picture, because you're saying we are under consuming or underutilizing the tool of agriculture. Fertilizer, especially the synthetic ones, which are dominating the market. Where are we heading is the future? Will we see the big synthetic manufacturers also branching out? Is it something that is happening right now to organic fertilizer, since that demand is growing, and more sustainable ways of doing business?
Well, that is a very, very good topic, and it's the topic that is being discussed even this week in the summit. Most of the emphasis will be on use of organic fertilizer, and it's a topic that has been left out for over the years. We started with it. Most of the small-scale farmers were using manure, a lot of manure in their farms, but at some point they moved out of it and they went only into the inorganic fertilizers. But again, you cannot sustain your crops with only the organic fertilizers. You also need the synthetic fertilizers, because most of the organic fertilizers are mainly used as soil conditioners, and most of the minerals required by the plants are in the inorganic or the synthetic fertilizers. And therefore, for the farmers, what we usually emphasize to them is the balanced nutrition of crops. We emphasize the fact that the crops require up to 17 elements, and these elements need to be incorporated during the growing season of a crop. So balanced nutrition is very key for proper management and proper yield production of a particular crop. So that, I think, is the topic that we left out, balanced nutrition for the crops, just to ensure that they blend in the nutrition at the planting, top dressing, and even at the finishing, in all modes of application, whether foliar, whether basal, whether the sprays in like in the rice fields, they should ensure that they're doing balanced fertilization for their crops.
Okay, and this, you think majority of our smallholder farmers who are feeding this country are well aware of?
That is something that we are really emphasizing on. For example, for over the years, most of our farmers have been using products that are high in nitrogen and phosphorus, leaving out potassium, magnesium, sulfur, calcium, and the other elements that are required for the crops. And we as Cake Plus S, I would say, we are out there sensitizing the farmers on balanced nutrition, because that is something they also are not aware about.
Okay.
Exactly.
Definitely. And for farmers, I know now we are having the Fertilizer Summit coming up strongly. Sometimes, even as we do that, in conclusion, talk to us about for what the future holds for Kenyan farmers, because I know you're saying majority of us are, farmers are old. Young people, is it also one of the intentional processes? And also incorporating these other elements that you've talked about, the fertilizers, and what does the future hold for the smallholder farmers in this country?
I think it holds a lot because we will continue eating. Our population continues to increase. In about 10 years, we'll increase by close to 10 million. And the only way really is to look very concertedly at agriculture. How can we all support the agricultural sector in this country to grow, to transform and then grow to feed us all? And also to leverage things like African Continental Free Trade Area, COMESA, the East African Community Region. But of course, the first thing we must look at is, are we feeding ourselves? Are we food and nutrition secure? So what I would say is farmers are not poor. Farmers are not victims. Farmers are entrepreneurs. Farmers are in business. They need to be supported, just like we talk about a conducive environment for business in other sectors. We also need to talk about this when it comes to the agriculture sector, remembering that any document you read, any public document you read in this country, starts with agriculture is the backbone of this country's economy, contributes 27% GDP and all that. We know the story. But then when you look at the flip side, how are we really supporting these farmers?
Okay.
That is what we must focus on. And once we focus on that, young people like you and others are going to come into the sector, and we are going to transform this country's economy as we know it. So there's a lot of potential, and there's a lot of money to be made because people will always eat.
Definitely. People will always eat, and people remain lit. And you know what? Young people like we, let me be inclusive. Like all of us, you're very young people, but you're already in it. You're already in it, and the value chain. Dr. You're already in it also. It's just me to join the bandwagon, but I'm also in it technically because I'm eating, Yep. I'm part of the value chain. But thank you very much. I think that's where we put a full stop. This has been a very interesting and very informative discussion. I think it's opened that opportunity to discuss some of these issues even further in our subsequent products. But thank you very much, guys, for making time. On my immediate, left here, we have Dr. Guardian Gwademba, food system specialist from WHH, Victoria Nandwa, who is a regional agronomist, K Plus Fertilizers, and we have Dr. Daniel Mwenda Ntamailuta. Yeah, I've challenged myself and I've gotten in. Who's the CEO of Kenya National Farmers Federation, that is Kenneth. That's been Farm Kenya Show. Thank you very much for joining with us over the past hour and a half. You're an incredible person. My name is Noki Kimboy. Enjoy the rest of your viewing. Choose.
Mkono ambao unalima ardhi